General Hodges, thank you very much for attending. Obviously, since the last event, and between then and now, there's something of a Russian-sized elephant in the room. Could we perhaps begin there and really discuss what is the issue, what is our intelligence telling us that is the issue that we need to respond to?
Well, it's irrefutable right now that Russia is providing a significant amount of aid to their proxies, who some people refer to them as separatists, but I call them proxies because they are obviously linked to Russia. They're receiving equipment, ammunition. The amounts and quality that they're receiving is not something that a militia would use or could build in their basement. In fact, the amount of armored vehicles and heavy artillery and rocket launchers that the rebels are using has doubled since the Minsk agreement back in September. So this makes it pretty serious. And the recent shelling in Mariupol, first time in a while that Mariupol itself has been threatened, gives great concern, because if Russia was to attempt to build a land bridge, if you will, all the way to Crimea, they'd have to go through Mariupol. So that's very concerning.
And you've introduced, since being in command, something of a mantra for Army Strong, Strong Europe. Can you tell us about this framework and what that means in practical terms?
The United States Army, about 30,000 soldiers that are stationed in Europe, forward stationed, on behalf of the U.S. Army. We represent relationships, logistical capability, air defense. We do have the airborne brigade, a Stryker regiment, medical brigade, all the different enablers, fantastic training center at Grafenwehr and Hohenfels. So it's a collection, if you will, of tangible things such as training centers and logisticians, but also the relationships that we have with our allies that you can only have by being here. It's what gives the United States early entry capability instead of having to do a forced entry to get into carry out the President's directives. You really saw it in evidence last spring after Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea. The President deployed paratroopers out of Vicenza, Italy on almost no notice, immediately into 4 different countries. They were able to do that because of the relationships that already existed between U.S. Army Europe and those countries. This is what we call Strong Europe. It's what enables access, it enables our allies, it assures allies by having the U.S. presence here.
And since that rapid response action, there's been more of a long-term strategy to have something of a brigade-sized delivery of equipment to that region. Can you just talk us through that and the reasoning there?
About 2 years ago, General Odierno, Chief of Staff of the Army, realized that as the size of the Army in Europe was getting smaller, we had a smaller footprint, if you will, and also looking at the end of operations in Afghanistan, he still would have a requirement to provide land capability to the combatant commander. And so the concept known as regionally aligned forces was established. And there is a portion of the United States Army that's dedicated to Europe, South America, Africa, the Pacific, in addition to the forces that are already there. So the regionally aligned force was born 2 years ago before President Putin's illegal annexation. So we're benefiting from that foresight of the Chief of Staff of the Army, so that we had a heavy brigade out of Fort Hood, Texas, that was already in the queue to come to Europe in the summer of 2014 with their equipment. And that's who relieved the paratroopers early on. What the Army has decided to do is to leave the equipment of an entire Armored Brigade combat team, about 220 M1 tanks, M2 Bradleys, a battalion of self-propelled artillery, all the armored engineer vehicles, and so on. It will all be on the ground in Europe by the end of calendar year 2015. The next step is to establish European activity sets, EAS, where we can put this equipment. Most of it will be in Germany, perhaps, but we're looking at sites in Baltic countries, in Poland, and in Romania and Bulgaria. And if that fits the EUCOM, U.S. European Command's strategic design, if those nations want it, and if the U.S. ambassadors in each country want it, then I think you'll see those things being established in 2016, so that you've got forward stationed Armored Brigade combat team of equipment that rotational forces can fall in on. So you're looking at a deterrent capability as well as an assurance capability.
And of course that capability is not an isolated EUCOM effort, it's an allied effort. We're in a coalition environment and that needs to be remembered. So presumably interoperability moving forward, stronger partnerships with allies and partners within that region is probably going to be something of a priority to you.
Coming out of the Whale Summit, the alliance was as unified as I've seen it in many years. A commitment to assure the allies and to deter Russia. The two sort of main outcomes of Wales were an agreement to conduct exercises, a much more robust exercise program with all the nations of the alliance involved. Those are already underway under what we call Operation Atlantic Resolve. And then an adaptation of the command structure, the force structure, and the most visible part of that was the VJTF, the Very High Readiness Joint Task Force, which is being developed now. All aspects of this will require multinational formations. You may have an American company under an Estonian battalion that's under a German brigade. It's as part of the NATO Response Force, it's part of the Very High Readiness Joint Task Force. So interoperability at the tactical level is going to be the norm. That means there really are two pillars. The first pillar is common standards, common procedures, things that can be trained. The other pillar is a little bit harder to get to, and specifically we're talking about communications interoperability at the tactical level. So FM radio secure so that that American company commander can talk to his Estonian battalion commander. They both have Harris radios, but right now we don't have the same crypto. It also means friendly force tracking so that all the icons have to show up no matter which system you're using. So the exercise program that we're doing as part of Strong Europe and that we'll be doing all over Europe the rest of this year, those exercises are aimed at improving that interoperability.
And just finally, you've obviously been with us at the Armoured Vehicle Series before worldwide. Really, in a nutshell, what benefits do you get from attending?
Well, first of all, it's encouraging to see that industry continues to look for ways to make equipment that is relevant to the contemporary operating environment. It gives me and my colleagues a chance to emphasize the importance of interoperable equipment. And of course, a chance to reinforce the bonds between the nations to make up the most successful alliance in the history of the world.
Fantastic to have you back, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.